of 6, Council?
We have quorum, Your Worship.
Have quorum? All right. I will call the meeting to order for the City of Lloydminster regular council meeting dated Monday, April 26th, 2021. At this moment, we will take a silent moment of personal reflection. I will remind all members of council that they are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest as per section 133 of the Lloydminster Charter regarding any item on this agenda. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I'll be declaring for 6.5.3, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other conflicts that need to be noted? Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll ask item number 2 if there's any additions or deletions to this agenda. City Clerk, is there any that you're aware of?
None I'm aware of.
Thank you very much. With that, I will move to item number 3, and I will look for direction from council regarding the approval of the agenda presented. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the agenda dated April 26, 2021 be approved.
Thank you very much. I'll look for council for a seconder. Councillor Fagnan, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion at hand? Not seeing any noted, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Opposed, carried. Moving on to item number 4, the approval of the previous meeting minutes. I'll look for direction from council. Councillor Whiting.
I move that the regular council meeting minutes dated April 12th, 2021 be approved.
Thank you very much. I'll look to council for a seconder, please. Councillor Dialchuk, thank you very much. Any further discussion on those minutes? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Any opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 5 in the agenda is business arising from those minutes. Is there any business that needs to be dealt with at this time from those minutes? Not seeing any noted, I will move to item number 6, which is new business in 6.1, city manager, the city manager's office. So I'll turn it to the city manager.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. For 6.1.1, the 2020 report to the community, I'll turn it over to our Director of Communications, Leo Perry, to present.
Thank you.
Hello, Your Worship and Council. First thing I'll do is just make sure everybody can hear me okay.
We can. Thank you very much, Leo.
Great. Well, it is my pleasure to bring you another edition of our annual report to the community. So as this council is aware, each spring administration compiles a report to the community that summarizes municipal activities and progress from the previous calendar year. Managers from all of our city departments submit pertinent information for the report, which is compiled into this visually compelling document. So to say 2020 was an interesting year for the City of Lloydminster would be an understatement. While the City of Lloydminster was greatly tested this past 14 months, it is also important to highlight that many success stories have emerged as well. Our 2020 story is perhaps best encapsulated on pages 6 and 7 of this document, where Mayor Gerald Albers and City Manager Dion Pollard walk the readers through some of the finer points of the year that was. But for the City of Lloydminster, the pandemic was not the only story of 2020, fortunately. This year's 35-page report also outlines our progress on several key capital projects, including the city's new $80 million wastewater treatment plant and a new home for the museum and archives, in addition to several major infrastructure improvements and economic initiatives. The 2020 edition also includes a special tribute to former mayor and councillor, our friend Ken Baker, who passed away in November 2020. I would also like to note that much of this year's photography was submitted by Lloydminster residents. Some fantastic examples of this photography, can be found on pages 11, 22, 24, and 25. And we offer, on behalf of the City of Lloydminster, we offer a special thanks to all those who contributed these outstanding images for us to approve this year's report at no charge to us. They gave us permission to use the photos, which was fantastic. The 2020 report to the community, as well as an archive of previous community reports, can always be viewed online at lloydminster.ca/community reports. And a limited number of print copies are also available by request at City Hall or to one of our city councillors. So with that, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to address any questions or comments you may have regarding this year's report.
Thank you very much, Leo. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Just as always, a note of thank you to you and your team, Leo, and the many residents who contributed to this on a document well done front to back. I always look forward to this and getting my printed copies. I do have those that request them from me every year so far, and I do like to be able to hand those out. It's a really well done front to back, and just again, a word of thank you for all your efforts put into this. You and your team did a fantastic job once again.
Thanks, Councillor. I should give a tip of the hat to our communications coordinator, Eric Keeley, who led the charge in this year's report.
Councillor Marin.
My unmute was not working. I apologize. So thank you, Your Worship. And Leo, I just want to say thank you to you and your team for the excellent work on this. What a great report to get in the midst of an agenda that's packed full of, bylaws and challenging things that we need to look at, that helped us to really reflect on all the good things that happened in 2020 and the good things that the residents participated in, as well as the good work that happened at City Hall. So thanks for pulling this report together. It looks spectacular, and I'll look forward to getting some of those copies that I didn't know I could get. So I'll look forward to getting those printed copies so I can pass them out as well.
Thank you, Councillor.
And Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just as a general comment, I think that the report was very well done, and I just really appreciate what it does. You know, as a council, we set out at the beginning of each 4-year period, and we set out strategic plans, strategic goals, and we say, okay, what do we want to do into the future? And then on an annual basis, we look at that and we say, okay, what have we done on the strategic plan? We get reports back on that, but we set out and we make a budget. So we say, all right, these are all the things that we're gonna do. And then this report to me brings it full circle and says, all right, this is what we did, and then tells the story of the circumstances of which we were faced with over the past year since we set that plan out. And I just think that it does an excellent job of capturing the circumstances of the year, but also showing all the wins that we got and really what we did with taxpayers' money, and what does that really mean in terms of, you know, specifics like the amount of garbage going into the dump and that kind of thing. And I don't know. I really think it's an important document for us to go out and say, this is what we actually did, given the resources that we had and the circumstances that were there. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Any other, Councillor Dachuk?
Yeah, I don't think there's much I can add to what's been said, other than I think that if you were a non-resident and looked at this document and looked at it, it really portrays the city in a bright, welcoming, positive way that it just pops off the page. And so, again, thanks to Leo and the crew, and also all those individuals that submitted the pictures, because I think they've really contributed to sort of providing this context to all this work's being done, but within this city in this context. So I think that it all comes together very, very well.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council?
If I could, Your Worship, I was just going to also mention we will be doing our usual promotion of the document through the city's social media channels as well. So residents can expect to see it showing up there and click through for a read of the online version if they're not able to get a print copy.
Terrific. Thank you, Leo. I see Councillor Whiting, you had a comment.
Yeah, thanks just to everybody. And, if there's a time where a report to the community is needed more than ever, it's probably after a year like 2020, where you just need those reminders of the fact that there's a lot of good things. There's a lot of things and good things and everything. And the city running behind the scenes, even when a pandemic and other things are shut down, and how critical that is. So it's even for myself, you kind of forget what has gone on in a year, but looking back at this and seeing all the things, very, very helpful and very useful. And look forward to doing a comparison next year again with this valuable document. So thanks to the team and everybody that submitted everything to it.
Thank you. Appreciate all those comments.
I've got Councillor Fagnan.
Yeah, just I can't add anything more to that, but it is the document is phenomenal. It really caught me. I think this is the best one that I've seen in the last number of years. So just congratulations to all those that have been involved.
I can't add a whole lot more. You folks have said it all very well. Thank you so much, Leo, again to the team for putting that together. Thank you for the residents that submitted photos, and I'm certainly excited to go back over it, because there was some great things that happened in 2020, even with the challenges that we've faced as a community, we continue to face. But I think that it shows the resiliency of our community as well as the beauty of our community, and both very items to be proud of. So thank you again, Leo, for that.
Thank you.
If there is no further comments, I will look for direction on 6.1.1, the 2020 report to the community. Councillor Marin. Oh, yeah, you're still muted, Councillor. There you go.
Are we good now?
You're good now.
Thank you. I make the motion that council accept the 2020 report to the community report as information.
Thank you. I'll look for a seconder, please. Councillor Whiting, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion at hand? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Leo. Moving on to 6.2, the Office of the City Clerk. 6.2.1, I'll look to the City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. For 6.2.1, request to waive finance charges, I will ask the City Clerk, Doug Rodwell, to present, as well as Chief Lee Swick is here to answer any questions that may arise as well. So, City Clerk.
City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the item we have before you is a request from a resident to waive finance charges, and the recommendation from administration is the council not support the request made by Mr. Rahameen to waive the finance charges for invoice ending in 21039. The issue is that Mr. Rahameen was present at the April 19th, 2021 Government and Priority Committee meeting, asking council to waive finances charges accrued through billing of a property cleanup, and the finance charges are in about approximately $755.07. On August 6, 2020, Lloydminster Fire Services was requested by the RCMP to assist in the dismantling of a illegal clandestine lab. Fire crews were on scene for 3 days, totaling 22.5 hours, ensuring the safety of the RCMP members and the surrounding public, while performing decontamination procedures for hazardous materials that were being removed from the residents of the building. The incident required a pump truck, 2 support vehicles, which totaled 3 apparatus and 6 fire personnel. An invoice and letter was sent to the landowner on August 31st in the amount of $22,250, plus taxes, based on rates applicable to Bylaw 25/2015, Section 18.1. It's important to note that Lloydminster Fire general fire calls within the city are covered under property taxes. Dangerous good responses are outside a typical response for fire service, and Section 18.1 of the fire bylaw provides the ability to recover those costs. The landowner worked with his insurance company, and they paid the lion's share of those costs. There's a breakdown of those portions in the RFD. The divisions of the portions and the costs were determined by the resident's insurance company. The city provided a lump sum billing for its services. All invoices issued by the City of Lloydminster include the following note on the bottom left corner of each invoice: monthly finance charges of 1.5%. Additionally, statements are sent when invoices are outstanding and incur finance charges. City administration and the landowner had multiple conversations regarding the invoice and the finance charges. Contact regarding the invoice took place between finance and the landowner, in which all contact with the finance department is listed below. The invoice was sent to Mr. Hameen for this instance is close to a true reflection of the cost incurred by the Lloydminster Fire Services, and it is the responsibility of these costs ultimately lay with the property landowner. The city invoice does not reflect any costs attributed to the RCMP's portion of the operation. Those costs would be recovered through the RCMP contract and paid for through general taxation. Council has three options in this: is to support the administration's in not moving forward with repealing these charges, support the residents' request to repeal these charges, or request further information. With that, Your Worship, I'll turn it back to you and Council.
Thank you, City Clerk. Questions or comments for the City Clerk? Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So do we have a date in terms of the first contact by the resident as far as when they asked about finance charges? Was it after they were charged, or was it after they were just initially invoiced?
I would refer to the fire chief on that one. I believe he had several conversations. Chief Swicky.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. The first contact we had with the resident was in mid-September, early October. And it was more of a question regarding the invoice itself. Regarding finance charges, would have been back in probably November. And I was with the finance department, which was then referred to us to try and answer that question on finance charges.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from Council? Councillor Thorson.
Yeah. No, thank you, Your Worship. When I asked for this one at least to be debated further at the council level, my main concern was that the initial invoice, whether or not it had the 1.5% finance charges will be charged on the invoice. And what has been presented to us is that, that 1.5% is on there. The only difference between what's in the AR is that it says in the corner of each invoice, monthly finance charge of 1.5% will apply. Doesn't appear on the finance charges afterwards. I don't know whether or not that's relevant or important necessarily. At the end of the day, the initial invoice did state the 1.5% on the initial charge. So based on that fact, it was communicated to them, and then they had a conversation about finance charges as well. So I want to make sure that we provided the opportunity for someone to see that there's finance charges that will be applied. They know that insurance may take a little while, that there may have been some communication to say, hey, upfront, hey, this is going to take a little bit longer on the front end to ensure that everyone's under the same understanding. Because then there would be no question that the individual is going to pay. It will be covered by insurance. It's just a matter of when that check actually shows up. Therefore, the city may have been less likely to have charged finance charges in that scenario. But it doesn't appear to be that's exactly what happened. It appears more so that the communication that it was covered by insurance and it was coming and that no finance charges should be charged didn't happen until after they had been charged finance charges. So, part of me is thinking that there's no issue with what the city did in this case. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thorson. Any other questions or comments from Council? Councillor Diachuk.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So I just want to make sure. So the timing of some of the things that have happened are the only question for me. So the insurance made a payout. The full amount wasn't paid out, and then he paid his portion, or didn't pay his portion because it was late subsequent to the payout. So when did the insurance company pay out on this?
Looking at the the report, it says $19,750 were received by the insurance company on December 21st. Is that correct, Chief?
Yes, it is.
So would he have known that that amount was the amount that was being paid? And that the difference is what he was being left with? Because that first bill goes out in October, I guess.
We received a letter from the insurance company on December 14th saying that the insurance company would be covering that $19,000 portion of the bill, and the outstanding balance would be the deductible and taxes paid for by the property owner.
Okay.
Any other questions of council? Not seeing any. You're good, Councilor Thorson?
Yeah.
Okay. With that, I will look for direction from council on 6.2.1, request to waive finance charge. Councilor Whiting.
I move that council not support the request made by Mr. Rahmani to waive the finance charges for invoice number INV 0021039.
Thank you. I'll look for a seconder to that motion. Councilor Marin, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Fire Chief and City Clerk. Okay, moving on to item 6.3, Chief Financial Officer. I'll look to the City Manager.
Worship, for item 6.3.1, the 2020 audited consolidated financial statements, I will ask our Chief Financial Officer, Denise McDonald, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Feels like morning. The day is going so quickly. Before you use the 2020 audited consolidated financial statements, I'm excited to bring these forward to you. We are required to submit the statements to the ministers by May 1st in order to meet our requirements. The consolidated financial statements have been audited by Wilkinson Livingston Stevenson's WLS Chartered Professional Accountants, and they were appointed by the City of Lloydminster as independent external auditors. The consolidated financial statements were reviewed by WLS and detail and concur with the information presented for you. So with that, I'd like to start going through the statements. So this is our cover sheet, and then we have a table of contents, our manager's report, the auditor report, and then I'd like to start with our statement of financial position. So the first total on there is our total financial assets. You can see that we're sitting at $112 million compared to 99 in 2019. That's 13.7 million increase. And you can see that it's sitting in our cash and temporary investments. But at the same time, our investments reduced. For our long-term investments were reduced, and we moved it into cash and temporary investments because the interest rates were substantially low during COVID. And you'll see that in later areas of the report. Under our liabilities, we have total liabilities of 56.1 million in comparison to 53.4. And you can see that that's sitting in deferred revenue on our balance sheet. And our deferred revenues have increased by 2.9 million. And that's further defined in note 6. Overall, our accumulated surplus is increased at almost $10 million. Again, that's defined in Schedule 1 and Note 17, and we will go through that a little later. Our next page is our statement of operations and accumulated surplus. And so this shows our revenue and expenditures for the year. You can see that our total revenues are sitting at 81.8 million compared to 82 million the previous year, which is down by approximately $149,000. What stands out on this is our user fees are down by $3.7 million. And that has been evidenced due to COVID and our facilities being shut down. Our budget was 83.5 million in revenue, and we are under budget by 1.6 as identified. Under expenditures, we're looking at a total of 80 million. In comparison to the previous year, we were at 80.9 million, which is a decrease in expenditures of just under $1 million. The areas that are significant are the road services team, and that has decreased from the previous year by $364,000 and is under budget by 1.68 million. When we look at parks and recreation, that is also under budget and is down from the previous year by $778,000. That gives us our overall surplus of $1.8 million. And that is an increase from over last year's net surplus by 820. I've got an extra 6 on there, $82,000. And then what they allow us to do is add in our government transfers to capital so that we can indicate our overall surplus of 9.9 million in comparison to 24 million in the previous year. So you'll see that number a number of times as we're going through these statements. So our next page is a statement of cash flows. And this shows our cash provided by operations. So we have $32.6 million provided by operations that gets added to that surplus. We have cash applied to capital. We've applied 18.5 million to capital. And we have cash provided by investing of 1.2 million. Finally, out of that, we have cash applied to financing. So we reduced our debt by $2.2 million in the year, but we also increased it by 1.5 for the fire hall. And so we have a net there of 779,000 decrease in our financing. At the end of the year, our cash and equivalents at the end of the year show up as 63.3 million. And there's further details on note 2, which shows that we held extra cash in short term in order to, because the interest rates were so low that at sometimes our bank account was paying more than some of the investments. On the next page, we have net financial assets. So again, you'll see the surplus of 9.9 carried forward, and looking at our changes in tangible capital assets is sitting at just under $1 million for 923,000. Our change in other non-financial assets looks at our inventories and our prepaid expenses, and we have an overall increase in net financial assets of 10,900,000, and that is an increase. That's a decrease from the previous year. Our net financial assets at the end of the year are sitting at $56.6 million, which is a 10.9 million increase over last year at this time, 2019 at this time. Our next page looks at the overall changes in the accumulated surplus. And here you can see that the first line is a beginning of the year. We have accumulated surplus of 30.9 million. And our ending for the year is 33 million. Our restricted reserves, those are restricted for legislative purposes. They can only be used for specific items. We started the year with 11.7 million, and we ended the year at 12.4. Our unrestricted reserves are reserves that council can allocate as they choose, and we started the year at 37.2 million and we ended at 44.5. Our equity in tangible capital assets, or TCAs, begin the year at 452 million and we ended at 451 million. And that is because of the debt for the fire hall that we do not gain equity until we start making principal payments on that debenture. So you'll start seeing that increase next year. The next page shows our schedule of tangible capital assets. So it splits it into categories of land improvement, building, machinery and equipment, and engineering structures. Our beginning of the year was sitting at $781 million. It shows here our additions split up by the different areas, and our construction in progress, or our work in progress, is sitting at $6.7 million. We had disposals of 2.5 for a balance at the end of the year of 798 million. Then we deduct our amortization and accumulated amortization on disposals for our net book value for tangible capital assets of $483 million. You will note that on the previous page, we had reserves of $44.5 million to support that tangible capital asset of $483 million. So that's approximately 9% in reserves to support the replacement of that infrastructure. So if we look at the next page, is a schedule of property and other taxes. So on this page, you'll see our real property taxes broken down into residential, non-residential, machinery and equipment, farmland, railway, and linear property. The total that we levied for the year is, for that purpose, is $51.1 million, and then we add in our grants in place of taxes of $98,300 and our local improvement taxes of $34,000. So the total we levied for the year was $51.2 million, which was actually a decrease from the previous year of $181,000. We had budgeted for $51 million, and so why it's over is we do not budget for supplementary taxes that go out in September. Then listed below that is our requisitions for education. So there's a provincial requisition for education, and that totaled $12.6 million in 22 compared to $13 million in 2019. We have additional levy of the CMS levy to the schools, of which we collected and paid out $2.5 million in 20 and 2.4 in 2019. So the total paid out to the schools is 15.1 million, and the net is our municipal portion is 36.15 million. And that is a decrease from the previous year of 30,000, and it is an increase over what we budgeted to levy of 192,000. The next page shows our schedule of government transfers. And so you can see that our transfers for operating conditional grants was higher than budgeted by 2.9 million. And you can see what stands out is the the Alberta government grant of 3.4 versus 1.4 budgeted. And the Saskatchewan government also gave us operating grants. And so you can see that it's over budget by 3.2. But when we get into the capital, you can see our capital is less than budget, and it's sitting at $8 million in comparison to 16 million the previous year. So overall, we are very close to budget, sitting at $15.2 million and comparing it to our budget of 15.2. Just under by 31,800. But you need to keep in mind that on our balance sheet, we have deferred revenue increase of $3 million to support that when we do that work. So it'll sit on our balance sheet until we get that work done and we can apply the grant. The next page shows our schedule of segmented disclosures. So across the top is our departments. Down the side is our revenue and expenditures. So this is the same information that we previously showed you. So I'm not going to go through this one again. So then we go into our notes. So our notes are pretty standard now. And so I'm just going to give you a little more detail on a few of them. So the first one I'm going to look at is the receivables note number 3. So here you can see our current taxes and grants in place and our arrears. So this is what we still have yet to collect. And so it is up in comparison to 2019, which would be expected due to COVID. We are higher by $846,000. Our trade accounts receivable is lower by just under $200,000. Our utilities are pretty status quo, a little bit higher than the previous year, sitting at 23,000 more. And overall, our receivables are sitting at $7.6 million in comparison to 8.3, which is down by $67,000.
Denise,
Yes.
or CFO, can I stop you and just ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Just as far as the allowance for doubtful accounts on the utility receivable, I know we just had a council motion recently regarding allowance for or for writing off some of those. But is there any particular reason why it's zero? I was under the impression that even the finance department would take an estimate and say what percentage they thought were uncollectible, and then that would be included in the current year's financials.
In 2020, we felt that we can collect that money. So we haven't, right now we're sitting at 1,500 outstanding in receivables that were over 90 days. And so we feel like we can collect that money. So if we can't, we'll bring it back to council.
Okay, thank you.
Then the next item on there is that I wanted to bring to your attention is the investment page. So you can see our investments are down, and I alluded to that earlier that we did not invest because the investment rates were so low due to COVID. We were fortunate enough to lock in some investments early on. So our investments are sitting at 2.64 to 3.98% on average. So fortunately, we're sitting at a good rate for some of those investments. The next page shows our deferred revenues that I was alluding to earlier. So you can see that our MSI is up from the previous year by 3.1 million. Our AMWWP is down by 1.85. We received the Municipal Economic Enhancement Program grant from Saskatchewan of 1.6 and Municipal Stimulus Program of 215,000 from Alberta. So overall, our capital grants have increased by 316. That's sitting in deferred revenue to be used in the future. With that, the next ones I wanted to bring to your attention. We have the long-term debt, which of course will be of interest to you because we are planning to do some borrowing for the wastewater treatment facility, and it's on page 24. And so you can see that we have debenture debt repayable to the Alberta Treasury Board and Finance, and their interest rates range from 1.67 to 3.058%. The next page shows our debt limit. So because of our revenues have decreased a little bit, you can see that our debt limit, which is calculated at 1.5 times the revenue of the city, our debt limit decreased slightly also. So it went down by 221,000. Then the next page is the franchise fees. So the impact of COVID on their franchise fees is showing that our overall budget was 5.9 million and we collected 5.7 out of that. So we are down there also by approximately 206,000 compared to budget. The contractual rights is a new note, and that just means there's future revenue coming into the city that's not necessarily reflected in 2020. And the next page is another new note reflecting the obligations under operating leases. And finally, we have a new note for COVID, note 24, and it goes through the timelines of how Alberta announced the public health emergency, as well as Saskatchewan, and then finally when Lloydminster declared their own state of local emergency. It identifies the grants that we received, as well as the impact on our tax rate and the deferral program the council introduced, and how we are unsure how it'll impact us into the future. With that, I'd like to go on to some historical information from 16 to 2020. So we are collecting information, trying to get a historical view of what's happening with our rates to kind of give you that snapshot of what Lloydminster's financial situation has been. So education mill rate, this includes the seamless levy. You can see that it has decreased slightly over that time by 0.05% for the non-residential, and the residential has gone up 6%. The next page shows municipal mill rates. So the top line is our non-residential rates, and then residential rates is the orange line, and you can see that the bid would have given relief to the non-residential following 2018 when it was discontinued, basically. So when we look at the next page, this is the total mill rate. So this includes the municipal as well as the education tax rates. You can see that we have an increase between 17 and 18. However, 18, 19, and 20 have pretty much gotten horizontal. And we have an overall increase of 33% over the 5-year period for non-residential and 23% over the residential. Now that seems high, but when you compare it to our assessment, because it's a combination of tax rates as well as our impact on assessment that derives the dollar amount. So when we look at the next page, and I have to apologize, I think I have these in the wrong order. I should have had the assessment next. So let's just go to the assessment, Wendy. Thank you. So you can see here our assessment, overall taxable assessments, the blue line, and it has decreased by 8% over that time frame. When we look at the orange line, which is residential, we're sitting at 13% decrease, and the non-residential is increased at 6%. So that impacts what happens to the tax rates in order to derive the same amount of dollars. So if we could go back one page, we'll look at the actual dollars levied. So our total dollars levied, you can see that we had an increase in 17 to 18, but we've pretty much leveled out for 18, 19, and 20. The orange line shows municipal only, and it is sitting, it increased again in that 17 to 18, but still horizontal. The green line is the education, and you can see that it's decreased slightly by 4.6%. And then the seamless is the bottom one, and it's decreased 8.7% over that time frame. So then if we can move on to revenues, user fees and sales of goods. You can see that our user fees have decreased over this 5-year period by 10.6. And of course, that's impacted by COVID. And we're looking forward to some of those coming back in 21 and 22. Revenues other. This includes penalties and costs of taxes, development levies, and licenses. So the the big jump on this one is the photo radar coming in-house. On the blue line, it came in-house for 2018. So even though there's high revenues for those years, there'll be relative high expenditures for that contract cost. So it's a little overstated by just looking at the revenues. The other one on here is the development levies jumps up between 19 and 20, and that's just due to one development levy. So as we start to get into recovery and we have new developments coming on, that money will be put into restricted reserves to be used for growth on any projects that we have that are growth related. The next page is on our franchise and concession fees and return on investments. So you can see that our franchises have increased, 4.9% over the 5 years. And our return on investments have increased 3 times over 2016. And we're hoping that we can recover some of that loss from the COVID interest rate decline. The next page shows our government transfers. So this is hard to anticipate, but you can see that we have increased over the time and successfully gained some grants over the 5-year period. The one that stands out a little bit is the local government transfers. Just digging into those numbers a little bit more, that does include, because these are consolidated statements, it does include the library. So the library receives other local government transfers that are not part of the city, but is part of our reporting mechanism for the year. The next page shows our salaries, wages, and benefits, contracted services, materials, goods, and utilities. So over the 5-year period, our salaries have increased 17.7%. And when you take the salaries and divide it by our total expenditures, we're sitting at 38%, which is substantial. This is fairly good compared to most municipalities are sitting in the 50 to 60% of their total expenditures. In that period, we would have had bargaining for 2 collective agreements, including the establishment of the fire agreement. Contracted and general services is up 7% over that time frame, and our materials, goods, and utilities have decreased 38% over that time frame. So we've really cleaned up some of those expenses. Reserves is our next page, and you can see that council's initiative to increase reserves to support the capital infrastructure replacement has been successful. We've increased over that time frame to support our net book value of assets that are sitting at $483 million compared to $44 million of reserves. And you can see the $12,451,000, that is partially our development levies, and so that's for restricted purposes to support growth and items specifically legislated that we can use that money for. The next page shows our long-term debt. So this is our payment of debt over the 5-year period. So you can see that it's decreasing, which is a good thing, and we anticipate borrowing for the wastewater treatment plant in the future, and so those payments will start coming back up again. Our debt limit. So here's our debt limit has increased quite a bit to 2018 and now has leveled off. So if we can kind of recover some of our revenues, we can increase that debt limit into the future. It's based on 1.5 times the revenue. Debt servicing limit is also a reflection of our revenues, and it has leveled out. And the last page is our assets. So you can see that our total assets valued at $798 million. Our net book value after accumulated amortization is sitting at $483 million. $314 million is our accumulated amortization. Annual amortization is sitting at $19.4 million. And the green line is our contributed assets, of which we didn't have any in 2020. with that, that's a pretty quick synopsis of what what happened financially in 2020, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, CFO, for that presentation. Council, I'll look for questions or comments. Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Denise. That was a great presentation, and it really shows the direction that the city has headed in over the past 5 years in terms of just shoring up the balance sheet. And one other thing that I think is relevant that's not on here that make a sticky note for next year is just showing the perspective, a pie chart of where the city's revenues came from 5 years ago to today, because you really can't see the whole picture when you just see taxes increase, and you see things like that as like, oh yeah, council's just increasing taxes. Well, when you see the land sales fall off and go from whatever it was, $17 million in 2015 to essentially a tenth or less of that now, it really gives the whole picture of where we came from to where we are now, and how the way that we budget and the way that we kind of live is within our means now, and then it's a lot more sustainable model of funding over a long-term period. And the way that we've grown reserves is one in which there's more flexibility in terms of how the city is going to address their infrastructure needs moving forward, whether that is a degree of reserves, a degree of debt, and what we can do for searching out grants and things like that. But it just gives us that flexibility that the emergencies are maybe going away a little bit more, and that we can be more strategic with how we fund things, so that it's not all taxpayer dollars necessarily right out of their pocket, levied at the city level. So it's a great presentation, and I think it really shows a strong picture of where our city has gone to and where it's getting to in terms of its financial position. So thank you, and thank you to your team.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dachuk.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, about 4 years ago, one of the areas that the council was asked to address by George Cuff was our finances. So you're the third CFO that we've had, and one I think that's lasting and doing probably the best job of the lot, is my opinion at this point. And in part, I think when I look at where we're at now with reserves, that's a position that we certainly did not enjoy at all. And I think, again, a credit to you and your staff as well. And we've had a bit of an opportunity to talk to auditors today, but the ability to generate the reports, to be able to represent the information in a way that makes sense, it's been a long time coming. So credit to you and the staff, Adele, and the rest of the crew there. This is good stuff, and I think it's great for us as well as our community. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Marin.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Denise, thank you for this very good presentation. I was reading these over the weekend, getting ready, and I had all kinds of questions, and you've answered, you pretty much answered all of them. So thank you for a really good presentation. What I really appreciated, and when I looked back over past City of Lloydminster financial statements, was I couldn't leave with an understanding of what was really going on with the city finances, and this has been very clear, like clearly laid out, and really is representative of what the city's been doing and the work that's been going on. I noted that the government transfers in 2020 were higher, and that we don't have any control over that, and so I just want to caution us to not depending on those numbers, that we don't know what next year's budget dollars will bring or grants will bring to our community. But the city's done a very good job, and I think probably mostly for your department and departments that you work with, in getting grant funding into the city and really writing a lot of grant reports. And if people could see all of that, those grant applications that are submitted, and we're waiting for decisions to be made on them, how hard the city is working to bring those extra grant dollars into our communities. So thanks for a very good report, and for the good work that's happening there to make our financial statements clear to even lay people like myself. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Denise and your team, for a continued effort of improvement. It's been a pleasure to watch the change from 4 years ago to now in how that reporting has come forward. I think it's worth noting at this juncture, further to Councillor Marin's comments, that we know that those transfers are going to be going down. It's guaranteed from both Alberta and from Saskatchewan. So the fact that we're building up some resiliency and some reserve there to help offset those declining revenues at MSI and the transfers from the Saskatchewan provincial government is pertinent now. You know what? I'd love for council to take credit for making decisions like that, knowing that there was going to be a great big decrease in this stuff coming, but of course we didn't. But you have to prepare for that stuff, so we can take some credit for that. You and your team can take some credit for that because you just can't count on those things. But it's going to be a marked decrease going forward, so we're going to have to be aware of that, and you guys are very much on top of it. So thanks to you and your team for your efforts.
CFO, during our conversations we've had at council leading up to this preliminary quarterly reports, that we finished with a $1.88 million surplus. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, that surplus would not be there without the municipal operating support transfer from the government of Alberta and the safe restart money provided by the government of Saskatchewan. Is that correct? You're muted, CFO.
Yes, that is correct. We certainly had a deficit if we would not have received those grant funds from the two governments. And that overall surplus that we were able to record because of that is being set aside into a resiliency reserve, because we still will be affected by COVID in 2020. And because our facilities are not closed, we will not have the ability to reduce our expenditures as much as we anticipate the loss in revenue. So we, we wanted to ensure that money is available in the event that we have to do something to support our bottom line for 2021.
Thank you very much. And I think that's the message that we conveyed to the community earlier through your department, that there may be a deficit. So that deficit doesn't show up in these financial statements simply due to the fact that there was additional monies received from the provinces, which is appreciated and will be put to good use. But I commend you, the city manager, and the entire city staff to try and reduce expenditures as best as you could in 2020 based on the realities that we faced from COVID and other issues. So, I want to make sure the community understands we came out of it ahead. But without the support of the two provincial governments, we wouldn't have had that. But at the same time, we're not going to just spend that money without having some justification. It's going to be there, as you said, into a reserve to carry us forward, because we still have to get through 2021 and return to where the community has been in the past rather than where we've been working through right now. So thank you for that, and thank you again for the report. Again, as it was outlined by council members, it's great to see reserves build and be prepared for the future, because we don't know what is in store. We've talked about government grant funding for this coming year. We receive money known as the gas tax fund, which is well appreciated from the federal government. But as we transition and do other things, there could be less money due to the nature of where they want to take the economy and those kind of things. So there's always factors that are affecting our financial position daily, if not weekly, monthly, and it's affected by three governments. And that leaves us going back to the taxpayer at the end of the day, which we will have to ensure that we can keep a balanced budget and continue to deliver the services that we appreciate so much. So thank you again for the report. It's great to see, and thank you for it being laid out the way it is. I think it's made it very clear for everyone. Last call for our questions. Not seeing any further questions or comments from council, I will look for direction on 6.3.1, the 2020 audited consolidated financial statement. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I move that council approve the City of Lloydminster's audited consolidated financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2020 as presented.
Thank you. And I will look for a seconder. Councillor Torreson, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the motion at hand regarding the financial statements? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Got it there. You got everybody there, City Clerk? Thank you. Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, CFO, for the report.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to 6.4, Community Development Services. Councilor Dychuk, I believe you had a...
Yes, yes, thanks, Your Worship. I was busy trying to eat a cookie and not paying attention, and requested a respectful recuse to be recused for this particular one, which involves Lakeland College.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll certainly take your note of pecuniary interest and let you step away for this one. Thank you very much. Moving on to 6.4.1, I will look to the City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. For 6.4.1 Lakeland College Facility Use Agreement 2021 to 2024, I will ask Joelle Turcotte to present. See him there. I don't know.
Hey, sorry. I didn't think my video was working. I apologize. Can you see me or no?
We can see. We can't see you, but we can hear you, Joelle.
Okay. Well, I'll just go on. Unfortunately, it looks like my video is not working today. I apologize. Oh, there I am.
There you are. You got it now, sir.
Apologize. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to talk to you about the Lakeland College Facility Use Agreement, the agreement for 2021 to 2024. This agreement has been something that's existed since 2015. The recommendation is that Council direct administration to enter a facility use agreement with Lakeland College for a term of 3 years. In addition, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary agreement documents. Some background. In 2015, Lakeland College and the City of Lloydminster entered into an agreement which allowed the Lloydminster campus full-time student memberships access to the Service Sports Center and the BioClean Aquatic Center during the school term. This agreement had a 3-year term and had been renewed once from 2018 to 2021. Administration was approached by Lakeland College to renew the agreement for a 3rd term. To provide consistent agreements throughout the city, the Student Access Agreement was renamed the Facility Use Agreement. I also want to make sure that everybody's aware there was a slight change in this agreement from the previous one. In the previous agreement, it was only Lloydminster campus full-time students. This agreement, we've also allowed students which live on Lloydminster campus full-time. They're full-time students, but they go to the Vermilion College, but they live in Lloydminster. A little bit confusing, but we're allowing them access as well this year. I apologize, starting again. For the 2021-24 Lakeland College Facility Use Agreement, the proposed rates for the 3-year agreements are, and it's listed there for you. These proposed rates would need to be approved by City Council as well as Lakeland College. In addition, Lakeland College Lloydminster campus students pay an additional $5 fee at each facility to activate the facility memberships. The City of Lloydminster and Lakeland College both benefit from this agreement. Lakeland College full-time students provide a membership and access to the city's great facilities, providing users who may not take part in physical activity an opportunity to do so at the discount rate through this agreement. Your options are there. Option 1, the Council direct administration to enter into a facility use agreement and Lakeland College for a term of 3 years. In addition, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. 2, that Council does not approve the Lakeland College facility use agreement. And 3, that Council requests further information and that the item be brought forward to a future regular Council meeting decision. This is aligned with our strategic plan by creating internal and external communication and relationship building, coming to a mutually beneficial agreement by providing full-time students at the Lakeland College Lloydminster campus with access to City Lloydminster on an individual basis. Budget in 2020, the City of Lloydminster has received $36,038.60 from Lakeland College for memberships for full-time students from the Lloydminster campus. In addition, the students paid an extra $5 activation fee for membership. Last time I was here, there was a question about how many memberships. As I said last time, there's just under 500 students that take this membership. And as far as how often they use it, we had students come 5,500 times in 2019. And I'll turn it back to yourself, Mayor, for questions, council.
Thank you very much, Joel. Thank you for the report and thanks for the update on the questions from the GPC meeting. I'll look to questions for council or comments. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarifying, just so I got everything straight, is it students both Vermilion and Lloydminster, or students living in Lloydminster but attending Vermilion, or as well as Lloydminster, or just to clarify that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, it was just students that went to Lloydminster campus that were full-time. This year, we're including, there's some students that live on campus at Lloydminster, but attend Vermilion. So we're also including those this year.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marin, I believe you had a comment.
Joel, thank you for finding that number of times that students use the facilities, because that's pretty significant. And we want them to be active, and we want to have this agreement in place so students are actually participating in recreation and sport in our city. So I'm very strongly supporting this. Lakeland College is a good partner of the city, and they bring a lot of economic development to the city. And this is just one way that the city can be a partner with them in supporting student health.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, any other comments or questions? Councillor Fagnan. Get you off of mute there.
Yeah, I think it's, I love this agreement. I'm very pleased to see the numbers that are participating. And I think it's just a win-win for everybody on this. So yeah, I would strongly support this as well.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions for Joel? Not seeing any, I will look for direction from council on 6.4.1, the Lakeland College Facility Use Agreement for 2021 to 2024. Councillor Marin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to make that motion that council direct administration to enter a facility use agreement with Lakeland College for a term of 3 years from 2021 to 2024. In addition, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Fagnan. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's been presented? Not seeing any, I will call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joel. We'll see if we can get Councillor Diachuk back, and we'll get him. There he is. Terrific. Thank you. And all right, moving on to agenda item 6.4.2, City Manager.
Thank you, Worship. For 6.4.2, support options for the Lloydminster Bobcats Junior A Hockey Team, I will ask Tracy Simpson to present.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon, Executive Manager Simpson.
So today, I'm here to talk to Council about support to the Lloydminster Bobcats Junior A Hockey Team. As you'll recall, the Bobcats were in front of Council in January at GPC to discuss the struggles financially that they're facing regarding the pandemic restrictions on their ability to play. In February, we came forward to Council with some opportunities to provide some financial relief to the team in a variety of opportunities, including ice rental relief. So administration is before Council today recommending that the city waive weekday daytime ice fees for the Lloydminster Bobcat Junior A Hockey Team, which will be effective for their entire season of 2021 and 2022. This would be in addition to the agreement the city currently has with the Bobcats, in which they receive discounted rates for game times, practices, camps, as well as other uses within the facility. Since drafting the report, we've also been in contact with the Bobcats on a number of other issues. They are working hard to focus on fundraising from a variety of different means, including partnerships with the league in Alberta to support their financial efforts for their 2021-2022 season. That's all I have today. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions.
Thank you very much, Executive Manager Simpson. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Just two questions that I thought were missing from this report. The first one is, so this will not have any financial benefit to the Bobcats for the 2020-2021 season? That's my first question.
Yeah, Councillor Buckingham, that's correct. Their season, for the most part, is over. They didn't receive permission to return to play from the Saskatchewan government on the return to play plan that the Alberta government put out for the league, and so they have been doing some practices, but for the most part, their season is over.
So they're on the hook then for the normal billing for the end of what was kind of last season.
That would be correct. For anything that we've billed to date, they would be required to pay, unless council wanted to include that in the recommendation.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear, that it was going forward, not retroactive that way. The second question I have around that is, what is the actual financial implication to the city on this, doing this? It doesn't say so in the report. So to what level are we supporting the Bobcats in waiving these fees?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It is sort of dependent on how many daytime practices they choose to have during their season. I believe we provided that number, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can get that number for you from what it was based on previous seasons.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty similar, and I'd sure love the public to know, and I'd sure like to know exactly to what level we've supported the Bobcats in that regard, because I don't see them changing their historical daytime usage. I would just like to know how much that actually equates to on the budget.
Absolutely, we can get that for you.
Thank you. Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to Councillor Buckingham's point, because I'm not totally sure if it's clear that, are we assuming the same level of usage as prior years if we're waiving the daytime fees, or is it open season, they can go as many times as they want in the current year? And that's kind of where the dollar value being provided, I think, comes in, because if you're able to book 3 times as much, or we're going to take it for the whole day because we get it for free, it would be a different situation, I suppose, than their normal times that they normally would be practicing. Because maybe it was in there, but it wasn't totally clear to me. End of the day, I just would be curious as to the dollar value level that we're supporting them. And I don't have any issue with doing that. I think that I think it's clear that, you know, we're having a junior A team provides some benefit to the city, and having a regular tenant in that building under normal circumstances is a good thing. And if we do nothing, then we have the potential of having no user for that in the future. So it's kind of a short-term investment for a long-term gain is the way I see it. Yeah, that's just my opinion on the matter. Thank you.
Yeah, so Councillor Torreson, we would be assuming the same amount of usage. And I just received the answer to the question. The daytime usage ranged between $8,000 to $12,000 of revenue in previous years. And so we would be estimating about the same. And I would agree, we don't anticipate a huge shift in their daytime usage. We may see a few extra hours, but for the most part, their schedule is built the way it is for other reasons.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Marin, then Councillor Diachak.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Tracy, thanks for this report. I think just kind of building on what Councillor Torreson and Councillor Buckingham have already stated is that I think I'd like to see some details around this. So starting effective now, is it their 2021 season because they're recruiting? Does that start now, or is it, you know, August 15th? What's the date for that? And at the end of the season, I think that's easier to quantify, because, you know, when they're done, and they could be done earlier, or they could be done later. So I just think some more parameters around that, and perhaps maybe it's you know, the number that we would provide per week, just identifying, you know, is it 4 practices per week, or what that is, or a dollar amount.
Yep, we can provide that, Councillor Mayor, and at Council's request. So the season would begin once the ice is installed back into the Civic Center, which would be early or late in the summer, and it would go until their season ends, which, depending on a playoff run, can fluctuate.
Any other questions, Councillor Marin? You're good there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Diachuk.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I sort of want to echo, I guess, Councillor Torsen's comment a bit. All of our planning that we've undergone in terms of planning for a replacement for the Civic Center has incorporated the use of a junior A, or the use by a team, a junior A team, going forward. Not having a team sort of might change that whole planning process. So I think we need to exercise some judgment and goodwill, and not just think only short term here, but long term, and the benefits that we'll have for the community, and what we've invested into it besides just what we're going to see on the ice. There's some longer term pieces here that I think are important for us as a community.
I certainly agree with those comments, Councillor. I think that the comments have all been good comments today, asking about how many dollars are actually being affected, because at the end of the day, it is the taxpayer that it has the effect on from the revenues of the community for the city. But at the same time, we also have a facility without someone to use it and to pay rent on it when they use it. It becomes challenging going in the long term. So I think that it is important that we take a hard look at that and look at the value that Bobcats have brought to this city over a long period of time. I appreciate the report that Coach Dubé brought to the GPC some time ago, the work that they've been doing to try and secure funding, and the continuous work that they're continuously doing, because they realize this is something they have to wrestle with. COVID was not their choice, like many others, including our own. It happened, and they faced the consequences. And I think it's important that we try to be as cooperative as we can as the property owner, in this case, or the provider of providing the ice surface, working with the team as best as we can within a reasonable aspect. I think that's what we're seeing today. Councillor Diachuk.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think there's another element here as well, is that initially, when we talked about the owners of the Bobcats, I had this perception that people were engaged in this ownership as a for-profit scenario, and that's really not the case. Many people have contributed funds to this with zero expectation of someday becoming wealthy or getting a return on the money they put in. So they do remain sort of at an arm's length. There is a managing committee, but when we talk about the ownership, it's we certainly shouldn't be conjuring up the perception of a Peter Pocklington or other sort of people who can have significant bank accounts that are generating, extreme amounts of money as this being trying to make it a for-profit organization. This organization operates marginally and works hard to make sure that it can stay afloat too. So I think it's important for the community to recognize that this isn't, an operation that is funded by many wealthy people who are just looking to make a dime on this.
Absolutely. Good point, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? Not seeing any. I will look for direction from Council on 6.4.2. Councillor Torsen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And this is, me making the assumption that our administration generally has a good feel for these things and will get us the additional information as we need it, but it doesn't preclude us from, I think, making the motion today. So I move that Council authorize administration to waive weekday daytime ice fees for the Lloydminster Bobcats Junior A hockey team, effective until the end of the 2021-2022 season.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded, Councillor Diachuk. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's at hand and been presented? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Executive Manager Simpson, for that report.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 6.5. I have Operation City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. For 6.5.1, 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Supplemental Program Construction Contractor Award, I will ask James Rogers to present. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, James. Welcome.
Fantastic. Thank you. Before you is the 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Supplemental Program Construction Contractor Award. The recommendation is that Council approve the award of the 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Supplemental Program Construction Contractor to ASL Paving Limited, Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, in the amount of $390,435.45, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2021 capital budget project number 21-13601, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, that Council approves a contingency allowance of 15% in the amount of $59,000, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2021 capital budget project number 21-13601. Due to the failed condition of the existing sanitary sewer main infrastructure, administration must remove and replace the existing sanitary sewer main to restore adequate levels of service for residents and businesses being serviced by this main. As presented at the March 8th, 2021 regular council meeting, the Water and Sewer Replacement Program is an annual program intended for replacing and upgrading aging municipal infrastructure. Due to project efficiencies and favorable unit pricing received during the tendering process of the original 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Program, a larger than anticipated portion of the approved capital budget was remaining. As such, in conjunction with the 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Program award, administration proposed to complete a supplementary replacement program associated with an emergency sanitary sewer main repair in another area of the city. The 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Supplemental Program will consist of a sanitary sewer main rehabilitation and surface works construction along 48th Avenue between 42th Street and 43th Street, along a section of sanitary sewer main that has become obstructed and can no longer be serviced. The supplementary work will be managed as a separate program from the original 2021 Water and Sewer Replacement Program, which was awarded at the March 8th, 2021 regular council meeting. The supplemental program will comprise of the following upgrades: the replacement of the existing sanitary sewer main, including service connections, complete concrete curb and gutter and miscellaneous concrete sidewalk replacements, and the complete reconstruction of the 48th Avenue between 42th Street and 43th Street. The city issued a bid document to acquire the services of an experienced prime contractor to complete all construction activities for this program on March 26, 2021. The bid document package was issued and posted on the city's bids and tenders and was posted to our pre-qualified contractors. The tender period closed on April 13th, 2021, with 5 bids being received and reviewed for completeness as shown in the table below. Construction for this project is expected to be completed by September 3rd of 2021. With that, I'll turn it over to Mayor and Council for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, James. Councillor Buckingham.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, James. So just for a little clarity on this one, 48th between 42 and 43 isn't going to 44 because 44 south to 43 was done not that long ago, right? When there was a tie-in done there?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Buckingham, but I'm not aware of a sanitary replacement between 43th Street and 44th Street, but I will confirm and provide a response to you on that one.
And secondly to that, once we get this project completed, I would assume then that it goes 41, 40, 39. Is that in the long range plan there, or is it in not as bad a shape as this particular section?
So there is no sanitary sewer currently to the south of 42th Street. This is to repair an old line that is used as an overflow for a number of businesses upstream as far-reaching as 36th Street west of Highway 17, so quite a long way. The other program that you are referring to along 48th Avenue is part of our sanitary sewer main replacement program, where we are looking to divert flows from our 36th Street sanitary trunk into an alternate system.
Good, thanks, James.
Any other questions or comments for James? Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I realize that we're talking today about approving the contractor or not. I just had more of a general question about this project. As I understand it, this goes right in front of what we'll call the ambulance depot. So where the ambulance hangs out. So is there special precautions being taken as far as working with the ambulance to ensure that they have somewhere else to live for a few weeks or months or whatever it ends up being? Concern being that ambulances need to get out and need to get somewhere in a hurry, and having construction there would be a challenge for them.
Great question with respect to construction coordination. So before we start any project or we implement any traffic accommodation in this area, we will be reaching out to all stakeholders, with the ambulance being a key stakeholder, to ensure that they can access their facility, they can safely get out of the facility and still meet their response times that are required of them. So we will be working with them closely to ensure that the impact to them is minimal. Also, the construction along this section is not anticipated to take as long as we would typically see for a traditional water and sewer replacement program. As there is only a sanitary sewer to be replaced, we are anticipating that to be completed within a few days, upwards of a week and a bit. And then we will be on to the surface work. So the actual impact to them should be quite short in duration.
Thank you, James. I've got Councillor Buckingham again.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. As a guy who drove out those ambulance doors for 20 years, I can tell you that with a little bit of room out front, we could still, or they could still access the back alley and come out to the east and get onto 47th Ave probably as an alternative. Although not ideal, it is better than no alternative. So I think there's a workable angle there that that shouldn't disrupt the time too terribly bad.
Thanks for that comment.
James, if I could ask one, you've talked about replacing the sanitary sewer sanitary main. And you did mention that it's not replacing the water line. So do we have, what happens if we open up the ground and realize there's a challenge with the water line there, or do we know that information already? Because I always get concerned when we open the ground, and that's something that we strive to do, is do it right the first time. And I hear this from taxpayers regularly. What are we doing to ensure that there is no other surprises in there that the city is going to have to deal with? Because you have you're proposing a contingency, but if we had to do a major water issue as an example. So can you enlighten us on that?
So actually along this section of roadway between 42 and 43 Street, there is no other municipal infrastructure. There is only a sanitary sewer. So if we do find a water, I will be just as surprised as you. So we are not anticipating a water line at this time.
Excellent. That's great news. And that, like I say, that it's often, as we talk about it, where the water and sewer is, but this is just one of those pieces where it's different. We have back alleys and things like that. So there's various ways that the services could be provided. So, no, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions. One is just, given that I didn't go back to the other agenda to see, how does the pricing compare on this short stretch compared to what you're working with as far as the other more substantial part of the program that you had bid out before?
Great question. We have not completed a bid assessment between the two of them. But we are definitely in line with this price, and in conjunction with the original project that we awarded on 50th Street, we would deem this price to be in line with that one, for sure.
And then the last question is just, in terms of technology, I've heard about different things coming up, and obviously not the right approach for this project, but I've heard about like trenchless kind of lining on pipes, where the pipes are lined with some sort of epoxy or resin or something like that that's kind of just pulled through the pipe. I wonder if you're doing short stretches like this, whether or not in the future it'd be more cost effective than pulling everything up if you could just reline it with something that is, you know, expected to last. It's just something that I've heard about recently as to whether or not the city's investigated that at all.
So again, a great question. So for our 44th Street project, we are actually looking at trenchless means to replace our water and our sanitary mains so that we can limit the amount of surface works disruption and disaster that we do. So we have invested time in reviewing that, and we are doing that. In this particular case, the existing condition of the sanitary main is in such poor condition that we can't reline it. We can't pull a new pipe through it. So unfortunately, it is degraded to such a point where we must dig it up and install a new pipe.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor, and thanks for the update on that, James. For both that project, this project, and 44th Street, that will hopefully make people feel reassured that we're looking at all the options to try and get that street back in service as soon as possible. Any other questions for James? Not seeing any, I will look for direction from council on 6.5.1, the 2021 Water Sewer Replacement Supplement Program Construction Contractor Award. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council approve the award of the 2021 Water Sewer Replacement Supplemental Program Construction Contractor to ASL Paving Limited of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan in the amount of $390,435.45, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2021 capital budget project number 2113601, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, the council approves a contingency allowance of 15% in the amount of $59,000, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2021 capital budget project number 2113601.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll look for a seconder to that motion. Councillor Whiting, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. I will call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Would council so entertain a short recess? All right, I'll look for a motion for recess. Councillor Torreson, seconded by Councillor Whiting. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Got that, City Clerk? Opposed? Carried. We'll take a recess till I've got 3:04, so let's return at 3:15, please. Please remember to leave your cameras on, even though you're do not leave the meeting. From that perspective, I think I've got that covered, City Clerk, correct?
Shut your cameras off, shut your mics off, don't exit the meeting.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship.
Good afternoon, Anthony.
The recommendation is that council approve the proposed home-based business major at the property located at 4807 45th Street, legally described as Lot 15, Block 8, Plan B 1127, subject to the conditions attached to Schedule A. A development permit application was submitted on March 10th to operate a home-based business for the preparation and distribution of food from the home. The business has proposed no clients will attend the dwelling and that all products will be delivered by the applicant. The operational hours are proposed to be Saturday and Sunday from 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The accessory use is consistent with the municipal development plan and the mixed-use transition area of the downtown area redevelopment plan, which encourages a mix of residential and commercial uses. In addition to this, the application conforms to all applicable provisions of the DC1 district, which accommodates high-density residential, office, and multi-purpose commercial uses. The application was advertised in the March 18th issue of the Meridian Source to solicit public comment. All assessed property owners within a 30-meter radius of the site were notified by mail March 16th. No responses pertaining to the application were received. This application represents a discretionary use, which means council can add, remove, or modify any or all conditions recommended in this report. Council's decision will be advertised in the Meridian Source, allowing for a 21-day appeal period. The applicant will be required to obtain and maintain a business license for the City of Lloydminster for as long as the business continues to operate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Questions or comments of Anthony? Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe this is answered in Schedule A, but just as far as, food safety and everything, and that generally being under the health department, does say in Schedule A, applicant shall contact Saskatchewan Health Authority and Superior Safety Codes, blah. So that is all their licensing as far as the health and safety side of it and providing food products. They have to meet those standards prior to us giving them authorization for the change.
They're required to do that as per the development permit. So if it were a situation where somebody was operating without any required permits from the Saskatchewan Health Authority, we would have grounds to revoke that development permit.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm clear on like a chicken egg kind of scenario. Do they need our approval first, or do they need to prove to Saskatchewan Health Authority that they're going to meet all the kind of health regulations prior to getting permitted? Like which one comes first in terms of the order of us giving the permitting?
Sure. Oftentimes an applicant won't have their permits until they have a development permit from the city.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. That's where the only concern would be, is just because it's a food services operating out of a home. So we want to make sure that we're protecting the public from that perspective, but it is a little bit outside of our jurisdiction as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Good question. Any other questions from City Clerk? You have a comment.
Just to clarify a point for the councillor, the city business licenses require an applicant to meet provincial and federal regulations. So operating a food service business would require them to meet the provincial business or provincial food regulations.
Thank you, City Clerk. Covers off the question completely. The one question I had, Anthony, comment first, the mixed use transition area, I think this is terrific. That's what the intention was for a home-based business such as this. The one question I had, they've stated they're looking for 10:30 till 3:30, I think on weekends is what you stated. On the back, I see that or Schedule A, it talks about days and hours of operation on the submitted application are acceptable. If they so choose to move to say 6:30, 7:30 in the evening to catch the supper market, is that going to be a problem for them, and will that have to come back to us?
I wouldn't say so, as we're not being specific on the hours in Schedule A.
Okay. That's just wanted to check on that because I, as every business, you hope it grows and it flourishes, and hopefully that they'll need a few more hours than they've outlined here for their business, and that would be terrific. So I just don't want to see us have to limit it, then come back to council if that was the case. So great information. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Not seeing any, I will look for direction from council on 6.5.2, the DC1 Direct Control #1 District Home-Based Business Major. Councillor Fagner. You're muted, Councillor. Just you can catch that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council approve the proposed home business based business major at the property located at 4807 45th Street, legally described as Lot 15, Block 8, Plan B1127, subject to the conditions attached as Schedule A.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Diachuk, thank you so much. Is there any further discussion to the motion at hand? Not seeing any, I will call for the question. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you, council.
Opposed, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you.
You'll be back later on, but we'll catch up to you then. And moving on to 6.5.3, Councillor Buckingham, I believe you're going to.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I'll leave the meeting now.
No problem. To the city manager for 6.5.3.
Thank you, Your Worship. For 6.5.3, Arm of Britannia, number 502, request to cost share. I will ask Karen De La Rose to present.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon, Karen.
So before you today is the request for decision regarding the RM of Britannia number 502, request to cost share, with a recommendation that Council approve the City of Lloydminster enter into a cost share agreement with the RM of Britannia number 502 with respect to the culvert installation Guest Road located at Range Road 3273, Section 4-50-27 west of the 3rd Meridian in the amount of $73,531.78, excluding GST, and that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all the necessary documents. In addition, that council approved the transfer from the wastewater self-supported special capital reserve number 1-300-350-37116 in the amount of $73,531.78, excluding GST, to fund the culvert installation project. So during the April 19th GPC meeting, administration had informed the committee that the RM had requested to cost share the culvert installation on Guest Road. The reasoning behind this is due to the considerable amount of water that runs through the system that originates from the city of Lloydminster. The installation was completed by the RM in 2020 for a total cost of $147,063.55, excluding GST, and the RM requested the city share 50% of the total cost. Cost sharing is designed to ensure that those who may benefit from the local improvement pay the cost, and upon review of the documentation submitted by the RM, administration acknowledges that the city would be in support of co-funding this project. Additionally, administration will provide a caveat that the future co-funding request will require further collaboration and input from the City of Lloydminster, which includes submission of the cost share proposal prior to the city's budget process.
That's everything, Karen?
That's it, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Torreson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just really appreciate that part at the end, Karen, as far as what we're going to do going forward. I do think on this project, and I believe I said it last week when we had our meeting, is that, you know, we work really hard to try and get 50% funding on our projects with other levels of government. And this is one that would benefit us. So, you know, cost sharing on this just makes a lot of good sense. Considering we use and, you know, the water is originating out of the city and we benefit from this. So, it makes total sense to invest in this, but it's just a matter of timing on when those decisions happen and everything. So I appreciate your note on the end where we're going to make the request that when projects like this come up in the future, that we can be a little more conscious of it as we're going into it and just have it part of our planning process as well. So thank you. I think it's a great idea to do it. Unfortunate timing, but at the same time, 50% dollars is better than 100% dollars.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Whiting.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Knowing that this one kind of went in a different process than what we're hoping for in the future, can we say that this is a good cost for what the project consisted of? The total dollar amount of $140,000 was fair and equitable for something like this?
Yes, I would say, Councillor Whiting, that this is a fair and equitable way of delivering this project. And at the same time, for cost, we have replaced 2 large diameter culverts in that section of road. So in terms of cost comparison, we haven't done any assessment compared to what we would have done the project for. But I believe this would be a fair and equitable way of delivering it.
Karen, if I can ask, this is part of the water that's conveying through these culverts that people in the city would say, well, why are we paying for a culvert in the country? This is part of the Edmonds-Neely complex, the water that's conveying through that, correct?
Yes, Your Worship, that is correct. So this part of the culvert conveys more than 90% of the stormwater that comes through the city of Lloydminster. So this culvert is part of the Neely Edmonds complex. It's one of the road crossings within that complex that conveys our stormwater to Big Gully Creek and eventually goes to the North Saskatchewan River.
Terrific, thank you. So I think that's the important piece to take back to our community, so they understand that there's a lot of water that's there that wouldn't be there if it wasn't attached to the stormwater system and the Neely Edmonds complex, and the RM likely wouldn't have this discussion with us if we weren't producing the bulk of the water from our drainage with additional drainage from the RM being added to it. But the bulk is certainly, as you've indicated, is the city water. Thank you. Councillor Diachuk.
Thanks, Your Worship. Karen, I guess the only question I had left outstanding is the size of that culvert identical to what we would have placed or have placed sort of further upstream, closer to us?
The RM had retained the services of an engineering firm to assess the sizing of the culverts. They had it was a different size of culvert that was in there previously. However, it would convey the same amount of flow, if not a little bit more.
So it's as big or bigger?
It is bigger. However, there's only 2 instead of the original 3 smaller culverts that was there. Where they have put in 2 larger culverts.
Would we have done the same job?
We would have done the same assessment, Councillor Diachuk, and we have reviewed the assessment that their engineering firm had provided us, and we believe that it would have the same hydraulic capacity as what is currently there, or what is there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. I will look for direction from Council on 6.5.3. The RM Britannia number 502 requested cost share. Councillor Diachuk.
Move that Council approve the City of Lloydminster into a cost share agreement with the RM Britannia number 502 with respect to the culvert installation guest road located at our rural routes 3273 section 450-27 west of the 3rd Meridian in the amount of $73,531.78, excluding GST, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, that council approve the transfer from the stormwater self-supported special capital reserve number 1-300-350-37116 in the amount of $73,531.78, excluding GST, to fund the culvert installation Guest Road capital project.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder? Councillor Marin, thank you very much. Any further discussion to the question that's laying before us? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor, please raise a hand.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Karen, but don't go too far, I believe. I think you may be up again here soon. So we'll get Councillor Buckingham back, and then we'll move on to 7.7 is bylaws. So I'll turn it over to the city manager and see if we can get Councillor Buckingham back.
Thank you, Worship. For 7.1, bylaw number 14-2021, utility rate bylaw, I will ask Karen De La Rosa and Ken Urban to present. I believe Adele Walker is here as well from finance.
Great, thank you, city manager. Good afternoon again, Karen and Ken and Adele.
Good afternoon again, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. Is everybody seeing my screen? Thank you very much. So at the April 19th GPC meeting, administration had presented the proposed 2021 utility rates. And for this afternoon, we have prepared a PowerPoint presentation on the utility rates. And later on, we'll be presenting the utility rate bylaw. So a couple of key information. Our utilities are currently regulated by 3 separate bylaws. So Utility Bylaw 26-2016 regulates the water and wastewater rates. Refuse Collection Bylaw 39-2014 regulates curbside collection services rates. And the Stormwater Bylaw 09-2017 regulates the stormwater utility rates. The most recent adjustments to our current utility rates were completed back in 2018 and 2019, or sorry, 2017 and 2018. So 2017 for storm water services and waste services, and 2018 for water services. To date, there has been no adjustment to the utility rates while our cost continues to increase. Our operating expenses continue to increase with inflation, as well as the need to include provisions for resiliency and other unexpected costs. The 5-year future capital plan for environmental services is slated at $129 million and $129.8 million, which includes the cost for the new wastewater treatment plant. Our 2021 budget had contemplated on a 3% increase in utility revenues compared to the 2020 budgeted utility revenues. Administration has developed a utility model based on the following key principles. One is the principle of a self-sustaining utility, meaning that we're recovering our costs to provide a service, and the funds that are collected from utilities is able to fund both our capital and operating expenses. Funds collected must be spent on intended purposes, meaning that capital and operating reserves for the utilities is being spent on the utility. We also had contemplated on the principle of utilities being equitable. So we have consumer equity, which means that people who are using the services are paying for the services, and that customers who have higher demand for the services are paying a proportionally higher fee. We also wanted to have generational equity, where we're not overly burdening people of today for expenses that are too far into the future. And there's also the principle of continuous improvement, where we continue to reevaluate and re-strategize to address any funding gaps in our utilities. So for waste services, we currently have 2 service streams. We have the landfill services and curbside collection services. These services, as our solid waste services, is funded by utility billing for our residential collection. landfill user fees, which is our commercial and out of town, and other revenue sources from operating grants and sale of materials such as crushed concrete. The utility model or the proposed utility rates we are presenting today only focuses on curbside collection services, which is the fee that we charge our residents on their utility bills. So in order to determine our rate on the utility bill, we had to look into, we had to determine what it costs us to actually provide curbside collection services and what it costs us to process waste streams, which includes our waste that goes to the landfill, organics and recyclables. So we have a 10-year contract with GFL that defines our rates for curbside collection over the next 10 years. And for our landfill rates, we had to include a calculation of our cost to landfill, which also includes costs for funding the landfill's closure and post-closure care. So for waste services, we're anticipating or proposing a 15-cent increase for curbside collection and $1.35 increase for landfill services, which includes processing of organics, recycling, and also landfilling of waste. So overall, for waste services, we're anticipating a $1.50 increase. For stormwater, our stormwater is currently being funded by utility billing and also by annual billing for properties that are not connected to city utilities. These revenue streams funds both capital and operating expenditures. So in order to determine the utility rate for stormwater utility, we had to determine our cost to provide the service, and also we had to understand our customer base. So for stormwater utility, 94% of our customers are within the first tier, the up to 2,000 square meters of parcel size. And most of our residential customers are within this tier. The second tier, we have 11 R1 properties that are on the second tier. However, these are mostly multifamily properties. So based on the, principles of a self-sustaining utility model and the assumption that at this time there will be no change in the rate structure, where our rate structure is based on the parcel size as well on the development intensity. We're anticipating a $1.77 increase for properties that are up to 2,000 square meters, and a $9.54 increase for properties that are between 2,000 and 7,000 square meters. We are not anticipating any adjustments for properties that are over 7,000 square meters, so we can harmonize the rate increases with water, make it more equitable for everybody. The next slides will be presented by Ken Urban.
Thank you. Welcome, Ken.
Let's start the video. There we go. Good afternoon, your worship and councillors. So for the water and wastewater services utility, we have a number of revenue streams listed there. You can see the utility billing includes our residential and commercial customers, and that's where the majority of our revenue comes from. Our rate utility bylaw affects this part of our revenue funding. The raw water that we send over to Husky or Synovus, that is a separate agreement, and that is not affected by the rate bylaw that we're bringing forward today. Bulk water station, that's a revenue that we sell water to customers who usually pick up large volumes of water at one time. There's the ACE regional water system that city sells water to, where they distribute water to a number of communities west of the border, and there's a separate agreement with them. And in the future, we'll be sending water to Sask Water, I believe possibly next year. We'll be sending water out to communities to the east side of our border. Other revenues include offsite levies for growth-related development and also source control. This is related to the sewer discharge. If anyone is exceeding the parameters set out in the wastewater bylaw, there'll be surcharges on the source control wastewater. So water services, water wastewater services is looking at a 2% increase on the fixed fees. This is based on the meter size from a 5/8 meter to a 6-inch meter. And the price range is $18.99 to $17.46 a month, and we're looking at a 2% increase. For the variable fees, this is relating to consumption. Currently, our bylaw has 2 tiers, 0 to 30 and over 30 cubic meters a month. Administration is proposing 3 tiers for this upcoming rate bylaw. And we're looking at a 2% increase for 0 to 30, 30 to 70. And anything that's over 70 cubes a month will actually be a 4% increase over the current rate now. In preparation of this presentation, we did look at some other cities in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Just note that the rates shown here, we don't really know the level of service that each community is providing, so we're just doing a straight and simple comparison of what they have shown on the website for rates. You can see for our fixed rates, the average is about $47, and Lloydminster is well under that. However, the variable rate is $3.26 with all the communities shown, and our rate is slightly above that. To illustrate the impact on residential, we kind of took 3 scenarios here. We got the low user, average household, and the high user. The average household shown here is typically for a household of 4 to 5 people. So they're looking at about a $4.87 a month increase on the water and wastewater utility increase. High users in this case would be people who are watering their lawns in the summertime. They can expect to see just over $5 an increase a month through the summer months. For the commercial impact, we did the same there again. We had the low, average, and high consumers. So a high consumer on the commercial end that has around a $2,000 bill can look at seeing an increase of about $78 a month. And I'll turn it over to Karen.
So with the proposed utility rates, administration is bringing forward a utility rate bylaw 14-2021 with a recommendation that council grant the utility rate bylaw first reading. This utility rate bylaw will consolidate the rates from 3 different bylaws into just one bylaw. And will help bridge the gap between what has been budgeted for 2021 and actual projected revenue for 2021.
Thank you, Karen. Questions or comments from council? Councilor Marin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you were going through, I was kind of thinking about our own utility bills in our house and adding up what the difference might be. And it looks like for, a pretty average typical user in Lloydminster, that the price per month would go up about $8.14 for all the utilities combined. Does that sound about correct for what you were thinking?
For an average household, Councillor Marin, we had projected a $4.87 increase per month.
For just the water?
For all, that includes the increases in both storm, solid waste, and water.
Okay, that's where my mistake was then, because I heard you say that, and then I thought, well, I've added up these other things in addition to the last number. So $4.80 would be a pretty typical utility rate increase for an average household in Lloydminster.
That's correct.
Thank you for clarifying that, Karen.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor. Councillor Torreson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So after this was presented to council, and was on, social media, reported by the media, I got some feedback, from my number one feedback person who normally gives me feedback, which is my wife. And she said, okay, Jonathan, why are you guys looking at potentially doing this? Don't you know that, higher rates are not good for the community right now? And, I had to think about it, and I had to think about, what the reasons were that was presented by administration, and what are the things that I know about, the city's finances in general. And my response to her was goofy and took some explanation, but I said, what makes Wayne Gretzky, the greatest player ever, is he would skate to where the puck's going, not where it is. And part of this increase in utility rates is part of where things are heading, as well as where it is. We know right now that the variable cost to produce, a meter of water or whatever measurement you want to use is higher right now. If you're looking at a liter of water that you just used, it's higher right now than it was before. And we also know the cost of operations to treat that is going up in the future with a new mechanical wastewater treatment plant. And we know that the debt is going to be higher on that. And we need a way to service it. And we know that that the cost of things like landfills continually increases. As we use up the useful life of that landfill, we need to create the opportunity to make larger cells so that we continue to expand it and use it up to its full capacity. So, I kind of explained to her that it's not just about where we are right now, although we are challenged with where we are right now, but it's about where it's going to be in 2 to 3 years. And would residents want to see a cliff that they have to climb up over in that 2-year time once that thing is fully operational? Or does that increase need to be gradual for where we're at right now, which we know is higher, as well as where it's going to be? So we could operate it at slightly more of a loss this year and put more pressure on the property taxes, which we already know has been a challenge between utilities and property taxes. Or do we make the adjustment now and start moving in the direction where we know it's headed? And I am a firm believer in gradually getting to where it needs to be adjusted for the future reality that we know is coming. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I know that there's a lot more coming as we review the utility model to make sure that we're fully encapsulating all future capital and even the amortization of and depreciation of the cost of the capital that we have right now. And I know that more work is to be done on this area, but I do appreciate the work that's been going on so far, because I think it's really important that we start to make those adjustments, because that reality is going to come all at once and it's going to hurt. And we know that funding from provincial partners and federal partners, someone's going to have to pay for all the COVID funding that's happened over the past, year, and all the debt that exists at the provincial and federal level. And we know that municipalities are going to be one of the ones to take it on the chin in the end. So we have to be self-sufficient. We have to be self-reliant. And this just helps move us in that direction. So thank you for the whole team that worked on this, the water department, environmental services, and the finance team. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just kind of piggyback on Councillor Torreson's comments as well, and saying that, Council's been trying to push for a while to have a self-sustaining utility model. And not maybe for the reasons you believe, it's all about the transparency piece of it as well, right? Here's your utilities, here's what they're paying for, it's self-sustaining. Like Councillor Torreson referenced, you could, for lack of a better term, I guess, bury these costs in a mill rate, right, into the taxation rate. So at least this way, it's all above board and clear. I mean, nobody wants to see an increase in anything right now. I get that. I don't want to pay it either. However, at least I know where it's going, and it just speaks to the way we have to make it done. Councillor Torreson brought up all the right points about we can do this now in a gradual way, or we can fall off the cliff, or a year or two from now, where we're going to have a really steep increase to sustain this stuff. But council has been saying self-sustaining utility model, and staff's done a great job of getting us the numbers and everything we need to move in that direction. So Karen, your team, everybody in finance, thanks a lot for getting us to this point. It's transparent, it's clear, and if anybody questions where it's coming from, they can see it there. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Marin and then Councillor Gotchuk.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Jonathan, I think I'm going to get you to talk to my #1 feedback person too, because that was a great explanation. I appreciate that. I just wanted to mention again, and I think I mentioned it at our GPC meeting, but this has been a conversation that's happening in communities across the provinces, and many communities are looking at, should we just make the big jump and have it pay for itself, user pay right now, and cover our costs, or do we do that gradual increase? And I think we found a nice balance here in terms of doing the gradual increase. The other thing I want residents to know and us to think about is there's opportunities for us to reduce our costs as well. And so, there's things that we can do around water barrels and, using catching water to water our lawns and reducing the amount of watering that we do and the water that we use in our house. So there's some opportunities if you want to reduce your overall cost for utilities to implement those things as well. So just a comment for our residents.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, this will be something that needs to be discussed with residents as they go forward, because there is options available. Councillor Gotchuk.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. The several key points. One is, the gradual move as opposed to a spike. And everybody knows a spike really hurts a lot, and people may not. They don't prepare for spikes as much as they can adjust to a gradual change. And most importantly, I think, is this is an essential service. It's not like we get to choose to not have garbage, and we don't get to choose to not really have to dispose of our water and all the other pieces that come along with it. So it's important to contextualize it in the sense that this is a must. This is not do if you want to. And so making those changes and adaptations as responsibly as possible, I think, is what council's doing here. It's roughly a large coffee a month that you're going to be seeing as a change.
Thank you, Councillor. I think one item that comes to my mind in the delivery, especially of the water, the energy that it takes to remove water from the North Saskatchewan River and deliver it to our city is not cheap. And as we all know, there is a continuous increases on the cost of energy in the form of carbon tax, as an example, and it does catch up to us, and the city can't simply absorb that increase each and every time without adjusting rates. And I think that's, from chemical cost to transportation cost to all sorts of pieces, and it's challenging. And I think we've all heard that how things have been challenging in our community, and we understand, but at the same token, to continue to provide the quality of water, the wastewater service, the sanitation, garbage, those things are all costs that, as we've talked about today and in the future, because there are going to be increased costs in the future, and we'll have to address those accordingly. But by trying to come ahead a little bit now and continuously working with that, I think we'll have much better results than, as it was referred to, climbing a very high mountain, because that no one likes that, and I think no member of council would want to do that. And if we can make this a little bit easier to take, from depending on that cup of coffee you have, it might be 2 cups of coffee, Councillor, but it depends on that coffee stop, and go from there. But trying to keep it within a manageable aspect for each and every householder and taxpayer in the city. So thank you, administration, for bringing it forward, rather than us trying to play catch up.
Your Worship.
No further comments from council? Questions? Councillor Gotchuk.
Yeah, just one last question, I guess. So the agricultural lands that we have within our city, there's no impact on them in terms of price?
No, Councillor Gotchuk. There's currently all properties that are 7,000 square meters above. There's no rate change to those properties for stormwater utility.
Karen, on that note, I don't know the number. I'm sure you do. How many, the percentage of the first two, the lowest rate and the next rate? How much does that encompass of the city city land? I know it's a high number. Do you have that number off the top?
And that's about 96%, Your Worship, of the total amount of properties that we currently build.
Terrific, 96%. Thank you very much. With that, I will look for any further questions. If not any questions, directions from City Council on 7.1 bylaw number 14-2021 utility rate bylaw. Councilor Dutchuk.
Move that council grant first reading to bylaw number 14-2021 utility rate bylaw.
Thank you very much. I'll look for a seconder. Councilor Whiting, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion before I call for the question on the first reading of the bylaw? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, City Clerk. Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Karen and Ken and Adele, for the preparation of that bylaw, and we'll see it back in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Moving on to agenda item 7.2, I'll look to the City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, for 7.2 bylaw number 10-2021, proposed permanent road closure application, block 3, plan N5690. Yes, I'll ask Anthony Andre to present once again.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon again, Anthony.
Purpose of the report is to recommend that council grant first reading to bylaw number 10-2021, being a bylaw to close the lane lying within block 3, plan number N5690S, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m. The purpose of the closure is to facilitate the sale of the lane to the adjacent property owners. The application was submitted by Rossville Homes to permanently close the rear lane adjacent to their property located at 4114 50 Avenue. The request is being made to mitigate unsafe and non-essential vehicular traffic from shortcutting behind their property. Much of the lane involved was previously closed and consolidated in 1991 to support redevelopment to the west of the subject lands. The application involves the remaining portion of the lane within Block 3. The lane currently serves 3 landowners who were contacted during the referral period to determine whether the permanent road closure would negatively impact them. All 3 affected landowners are in support of the closure, 2 of which have expressed an interest in purchasing a portion of the lane. Should the application be successful, the lands will be sold and consolidated with the adjacent lands. Purchasing price and the sale of the land will be coordinated by Land Division. A 21-day referral period commenced March 3rd, 2021, soliciting comments, questions, and concerns from internal departments, external agencies, and adjacent property owners. Internal departments, including but not limited to engineering, services, and transportation, reviewed the proposal and did not raise any concerns or identify negative impacts from the closure. There is no municipal servicing within the lane, however, easements will be required for franchise utilities. A public referral was advertised in the March 11th and March 18th editions of the Meridian Source to solicit comment about the proposed closure. One response was received opposing the closure. The respondent cited concerns pertaining to public safety and convenience, indicating that should the lane be closed, motorists would be required to enter and exit the adjacent shopping center by busier roadways. This may lead to an increase in the likelihood of a traffic incident. The city's engineering services department reviewed the concern and indicated that mid-block lanes are not designed or constructed for site access. As the lanes have minimal to no traffic control, utilizing them for accessing major commercial sites may lead to conflicts between through traffic and persons utilizing the lane for their intended purposes, such as loading, garbage collection, and customer parking. Should first reading be given, notice of the public hearing will be given as per Part 7 of the Lloydminster Charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Questions or comments? Not seeing any questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion, a direction from council regarding the proposed motion. Councilor Marin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make the motion that council grant first reading to bylaw number 10-2021, being a bylaw to close all that portion of lane lying block within block 3, plan number N5690S, in the northeast quarter section 36 Township Road 49, Range Road 1, west of the 4th Meridian, lying within Area A and Area B on the sketch attached as Schedule A, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder? Councillor Fagnan, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion of proposed bylaw? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Anthony. And 7.3 through the city manager, back to Anthony, I believe.
Go ahead, Anthony. Thank you.
Okay. In order to facilitate the sale of the property to and support nautical land groups development within Parkview Estates, 3 bylaw amendments are required. The first being an amendment to the municipal development plan, which supports the amendments to the neighborhood's area structure plan and map amendment to the land use bylaw. Purpose of this report is to recommend that council grant first reading to bylaw number 11-2021, being a bylaw to amend map 2, future land use concept of the municipal development plan, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m. The amendment establishes a high-level land use framework for the next phase of the Parkview Estates neighborhood. The MDP is a statutory document which provides guidance and direction for the future development of municipal lands to which development within ASPs must apply. Planning and Engineering received an application from Land Division to amend the MDP to support development within the neighborhood. The application was submitted along with an application to amend the Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan and the Land Use Bylaw, as well as an application for subdivision. The application seeks to designate approximately 8.62 hectares of land as residential, along with approximately 5.79 hectares as parks, trails, and open space within the MDP. These lands are currently identified for future residential within the MDP, consistent with the amendment. The amendment will accommodate the subdivision and development of approximately 6.35 hectares of medium-density residential development, accommodating approximately 200 row house dwellings. 1.43 hectares of park space will also be designated along the north boundary of Nautical Land Group's development, which has already been developed as part of the Parkview Estates trail system and will be dedicated as municipal reserve. The remaining lands included in the amendment are located to the east of the subdivision area and includes approximately 4.32 hectares of land proposed for parks, open space, and trails. It is anticipated that development of the neighborhood park will commence within the next 2 years in this area. In addition, 2.29 hectares of land proposed for residential designation is included to accommodate future development along 68 Avenue and 69 Avenue. While there is currently no timeline for the subdivision of future lots within this area, it is included in this amendment as they are already designated as single detached dwelling, the R1 district within the land use bylaw. Planning and Engineering has included 7401 34th Street, legally described as Lot 32, plan number 162-1439 in the amendment. This lot is currently designated for residential development, but is intended and currently used for commercial development. The lot is designated as neighborhood commercial C3 within the land use bylaw, consistent with the proposed MDP amendment and applicable ASP. At the January 18th GPC meeting, administration provided information regarding the proposed amendments. Nautical Land Group provided information pertaining to their proposed development during the February 22nd GPC meeting. An initial 21-day referral was issued to internal departments and external agencies on January 15th to gather initial feedback regarding the development and amendments to the statutory documents. The referral was mailed to 100 adjacent property owners February 8th to solicit comment and concerns from immediate neighbors. Planning and Engineering received 3 initial responses from adjacent property owners. 2 of these responses pertain to the proposed row house development and therefore relate to the MDP amendment. Neither of the two respondents expressly opposed the row house development within the area. However, one of the respondents requested additional information about the development, including artist renderings, which were provided. Another respondent stated the need for additional park space in the area, specifically to improve pedestrian connectivity to the existing school sites in Parkview. They also suggested tennis courts be considered within the area. As a result, Land Division is looking to begin development of approximately 4.34 hectares of park space within the area within the next 2 years. The final adjacent landowner response pertained to a low-lying area within the ASP amendment area and its potential significance as a wetland. While the area is outside of the current phase of development, it was reviewed and determined to have been created during rough grading of a future phase of development within the area, and a response was provided. Due to restrictions imposed by COVID-19, additional information pertaining to the proposed redistricting, as well as the MDP amendment and ASP amendment, was included on the city's Your Voice webpage in lieu of a public open house. The webpage included information pertaining to the amendments, as well as the development information provided by Nautical. The webpage included a public forum for questions and comments available between March 1st and March 26th. The online event was advertised on-site by signage and was advertised in the March 11th and 18th editions of the Meridian Source. 10 questions respecting the development were submitted to the online forum pertaining to the proposed development and required amendments. Responses to each of the questions were provided publicly. To summarize, 3 responses requesting additional information, such as an artist rendering, were received. Responses were provided. 2 respondents raised concerns about traffic, especially if a school is to be constructed within the area. The city's engineering, planning, and transportation services teams completed a thorough review of the potential impacts and do not have concerns with the system's capacity. 4 respondents generally preferred to see single detached dwellings constructed in the area due to the proximity of schools and questioned whether alternative sites were considered. Finally, 1 respondent stated that they preferred to see a public school constructed within Parkview as opposed to additional residential uses. The public engagement efforts also resulted in an additional response from a resident of the Parkview Estates directed to planning and engineering. The respondent was generally opposed to the development of row housing within Parkview due to the possible decreases in property values, particularly if the development is not well maintained as it ages. Additional development information was provided to the respondent, along with an explanation of the opportunities to provide feedback, including during the public hearing. Prior to development occurring, amendments to the Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan and Land Use Bylaw will be required. Bylaws 12-2021 and 13-2021 must be adopted concurrently to ensure consistency between the 3 statutory plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Worship. I just had a general question about some of the public engagement and review there. So if we take the last respondent, for example, talking about being generally opposed to the development, we provided them with a bunch of information and explanations. Is that all within the referral period? Or when you sent that stuff out, did you get another reply once you've actually given, and not just for that particular one, but any of them, you provide them answers, and what's your feedback once an answer is given? Besides the fact they can come and speak for or against at a public hearing.
Right, so that last response, that would have happened during the public open house period, I guess you could call it, as opposed to the adjacent landowner. So it was a respondent from the neighborhood, but not within, directly adjacent to it. It's usually pretty mixed when we're providing responses to individuals. it generally, I mean, obviously we try to get a positive response or a positive result in which an individual understands where we're coming from or the information provided satisfies their concerns. However, in some cases, some individuals are simply opposed to a project. And in that case, generally the best thing to do is provide them with information regarding the public hearing so they can, at the very least, make sure that their concerns are heard by council directly.
Yeah, and that was my kind of leading into my last question about it is, are we doing a good job of making sure that people know when these public hearings are going to be? Now, not generally in our social channels and city websites and that kind of stuff, specifically to people that actually inquire. They've taken the time, they obviously have a vested interest. We provide them information back. But when that ends, are we letting people know when these public hearings are going to be? Because obviously if this passes first reading today, we'll set a time for the public hearing. Do we take the step of going forward and then replying to all of those people saying, if you have further comments, here's when the public hearing is going to be?
We have been recently. It's not, it certainly isn't something that's legislated, but I do think it provides value. The other thing that we've looked at doing with this one, seeing as we have billboards in the area advertising the amendment, is updating those billboards with a message stating public hearing, as well as a link to the website showing the ways in which an individual can be a part of that public hearing if they like to.
Yeah, see, for me, this is an opportunity to be customer service, customer focus orientated, right? So you speak to, it's not legislated, but right? You know, I'd like to see us do these types of things and do a really good job of taking the time to let these people know they have that opportunity. Whether they take advantage of that opportunity or not is totally up to them. But I've often, not just in this particular bylaw, am I bringing this up, I'm just wondering generally overall how we handle those things and making sure, you know, because personally I would like to see us make sure that if people have taken that time to actually engage, that we make sure that we're doing our part in going above and beyond to make sure they know what the next step is going to be at all times. That's all.
Good question. And I can attest that those signs are up. I saw them Saturday night driving around that part of town. So it's great to see. Anthony, thank you for bringing those forward. Questions, comments? Any additional questions or comments from council? Not seeing any. I will look for direction from council on 7.3, which is the bylaw number 11-2021, the Parkview Estates Municipal Development Plan Amendment. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I move the council grant first reading to bylaw number 11-2021, being a bylaw to amend map 2, future land use concept of the municipal development plan as per Schedule A, and the council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Thank you. I'll look for direction on seconder. Councillor Diachuk, thank you very much. Before I call for the question, is there any further discussion on the first reading of the bylaw that's proposed? Not seeing any, I will call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, council.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 7.4, city manager through to Anthony. Please carry on, Anthony.
Thank you. All right, so this is the second report of the 3 required for Parkview. So the purpose of this report is to recommend that council grant first reading to bylaw number 12-2021, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 5-2014, cited as the Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan as per Schedule A, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, not April 26th. Please note that error, 2021 at 2 p.m. In order to accommodate for the construction of a row house development intended by nautical land groups, an amendment to bylaw number 5-2014, the Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan is required. Planning and Engineering received an application from Land Division to amend the Parkview Estates ASP to accommodate for approximately 200 row house dwelling units. The development replaces plans to subdivide 77 lots intended for low-density residential. The application was submitted along with applications to concurrently amend the land use map within the municipal development plan and to redistrict the land from single detached dwellings R1 to row house dwellings R3 within the land use bylaw to ensure consistency between the plans. The proposed amendment to the ASP primarily affects stages 3 and 4 of phase 6, an area of approximately 16.8 hectares of land. The plan area is currently comprised primarily of low-density residential, institutional, and approximately 0.66 hectares of medium-density residential. It is proposed that approximately 6.35 hectares of low-density residential be identified for medium-density residential to accommodate nautical land groups row house development. The 0.66 hectares of land currently identified for medium-density residential is in turn designated for low-density residential. The remaining portion of phase 6 stage 3, currently intended for institutional and additional low-density residential uses, is reconfigured to feature additional park space. The option for a potential school site in this area remains, despite a low probability for the need in Parkview as confirmed by both the Lloydminster Public School Division and the Lloydminster Catholic School Division. Should a school site not be needed in the area, the space will be allocated primarily for park development, while stage 4 may include additional low-density residential. The final proposed change to the ASP's land use concept affects 7202 34th Street at the corner of 34th Street and 72 Avenue. This property is currently identified for medium-density residential, while the amendment allows it to be utilized for either medium-density residential or commercial use. The purpose of this change is to provide flexibility to the developer depending on market conditions. Regardless of the type of development in the future, consideration will need to be given to the lack of physical separation to the existing residential development north of the site. Depending on the type of development, an amendment to the MDP and land use bylaw may be necessary, requiring additional public engagement and a public hearing in the future. Legislation requires the MDP, ASP, and land use bylaw to be consistent with one another. Therefore, this amendment must be approved concurrently with bylaws number 11-2021 and 13-2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Questions, comments? I think this report fills in a lot of what Anthony, there was the questions posed earlier, and I think this filled in some of them. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify just for myself a little bit here. In that area right now, there's a couple spots that are institutionally zoned and one that's kind of labeled as a potential school. And you mentioned that it's kind of up in the air whether or not that's needed for a school. And if it's not, then it would move towards a park space. Is that correct in that?
Correct.
And what's the timeline on figuring that out?
Well, I suppose as the area is planned to be developed as a park space, that isn't likely to hinder development of a school there should it be necessary. I suppose the soonest it would need to be determined is when the subdivision for the phase to the east 6-4 commences, because otherwise a portion of that area will be utilized for additional low density residential. I don't anticipate that happening within the next 5 years, maybe 10 years. It's hard to put a timeline on it, but certainly not within the near term.
I guess I'm just trying to, like, it's a fairly, in my mind, it's a piece that is a little bit more, it would make me consider or not consider a space in there. And that's, I guess, just what I'm just curious is when that would come into fruition, or, you know, as an area structure plan, how do you, and I get, like, we don't know when the school divisions are going to provide that information necessarily, so I don't know how else to propose an area, a plan when you don't have all the data at this point in time. But I guess the difference between an institutional and a park space is not that big, but anyways, that's my comments.
Right. I mean, the purpose of an ASP is to provide some form of plan or structure to individuals looking to buy or live or develop within the area. And the current ASP identifies the area for institutional and notes that there's the potential for a school to be there. Initially at the GPC meeting back in January, we looked at removing that that possibility, as we do think that it's quite low. However, without a better plan in place for where the next school site might be within the city, we thought that it would be a good idea to leave it there for the time being until we have a little bit more time to look into and have a better plan as to what that looks like.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Diachuk.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I would say that it's not very likely that the Catholic system would want to build another school next to it there itself there, because they already have, in essence, a K-12 environment and the Holy Rosary site with Mother Teresa. And I know the public school system, and we were looking at building, looking at either College Park or this site. What we noted is that where the development was going to grow and continue, and at that point in time was College Park, so we're over there. There are some numbers around, you know, you need about 10,000 people in a particular block before you get funding, and you look at that area to be able to support, you know, 1 or 2 schools for that matter. And I think that's the challenge in this area. So if you put those senior homes in there, you're chewing up a lot of space that otherwise might be family residential and lessening the need for that matter for school. I would think they probably would want to space the schools apart a bit more than that site was. I think it was viewed as being one of the incentives to develop around there. So when you have a school, people like to build around it because it's a desirable place to build. So it's kind of a chicken egg thing, to go back to what a comment was made earlier today. The other part was going to make around this, was the development in the school. Lost it. But anyways, I do know, pardon me, I think the other part that's important to remember is that ultimately the school divisions ask for the city to provide space for them to build a school, and it is ultimately the city's decision. The city has a land bank that they keep for the schools, and the city will and the schools will sit down and sort of have a discussion where that will go. But ultimately, it's the city's responsibility to make that decision. And obviously, in the past, it was used because of this recognition of the development that existed. This was perceived as adding more development versus in the College Park where there already was. So those are the kind of factors that played into that decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion on the proposed bylaw? Not seeing any, I will look for direction on 7.4 bylaw number 12-2021 Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan Amendment. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I move the council grant first reading the bylaw number 12-2021, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5-2014, cited as the Parkview Estates Area Structure Plan as per Schedule A, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, seconder. Councillor Whiting, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the bylaw being proposed? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 7.5, to the city manager through to Anthony for the last piece. Anthony, please go ahead.
Purpose of the report, is to recommend that council grant first reading to bylaw number 13-2021, being a bylaw to amend approximately 6.35 hectares on the land use map, being part 4 to the land use bylaw number 5-2016, from single detached residential R1 to urban park UP to to amend 6.35 hectares of land within the land use map from R1 single detached district and UP urban park to row house R3 district. We got through it. As shown on Schedule A, and the council established a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021. To accommodate for the construction of a row house development intended by Nautical Land Group, the map amendment to the land use bylaw number 5-2016 is required. Planning and Engineering received an application from Land Division to redistrict the subject lands to accommodate for the construction of approximately 200 row house dwelling units. The development represents the majority of Phase 6, Stage 3 of the Parkview Estates development, replacing initial plans to subdivide 77 single detached residential district lots. The application was submitted along with applications to concurrently amend the land use map within the municipal development plan and the land use concept within the Parkview Estates area structure plan to ensure consistency between the statutory plans. The purpose of the row house residential district is to provide for areas of low to medium residential housing, primarily in the form of row housing and multi-unit dwellings. The density of the proposed development is approximately 32 dwelling units per hectare, well below the maximum of 50 dwelling units per hectare listed in the R3 development regulations. The development will need to comply with all other requirements of the land use bylaw, including but not limited to parking, landscaping, and minimum side yard requirements. The proposed development is consistent with the residential development and neighborhood design policies of the NDP and supports housing choice policies outlined in Section 8.3. The amendment supports the development of a range of senior housing opportunities and is consistent with aging in place principles. Redistricting to row house residential district conforms to the proposed amendment to the Parkview Estates ASP as presented by bylaw 12-2021. Should bylaw 13-2021 be granted first reading, notice of the public hearing will be provided as per Part 7 of the Lloydminster Charter. The land use bylaw must be consistent with the overarching municipal development plan and Parkview Estates area structure plan. In order to approve this development or this amendment, bylaws 11-2021 and 12-2021 must be adopted concurrently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any, I will look for direction from council on bylaw number 13-2021, Parkview Estates Land Use Bylaw Amendment, first reading. Councillor Marin, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Anthony, for your presentation today. I'll make the motion that council grant first reading to bylaw number 13-2021, being a bylaw to amend approximately 6.35 hectares, part of the southwest quarter section 35 township 40.49 Range Road 1 west of the 4th Meridian on land use map being part 4 to land use bylaw number 5-2016 from single detached residential district and urban park district to row house residential district shown on Schedule A, and that council establish a public hearing to be held during the regular council meeting on May 17th, 2021.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll look for a seconder. Councillor Diachuk, thank you very much. Any further discussion on the proposed motion for first reading? Not seeing any, I will call for the question. All in favor?
Thank you, Council.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Anthony. I know you kind of covered off a lot of bases there, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 8, mayor and council reports. I would like to lead off by saying I've attached my report for basically the month of April, a little bit of the end of March. You'll note one word that's very prominent: virtual. I've had the opportunity to attend several meetings just like this one on a day-to-day basis by virtual attending. Certainly everything from local to provincial matters, and even had an opportunity to attend a couple meetings with federal ministers. Again, just ongoing discussions regarding a lot of things, most recently the federal budget. From the perspective, certainly this last couple of weeks have been exciting with the announcement of TELUS and SaskTel with fiber optics being introduced to our community. Again, had an opportunity to attend the AUMA Spring Leaders Caucus, and I've had the opportunity to attend several meetings with ministers representing municipalities in Saskatchewan's executive and joining my fellow executive members from that perspective. The biggest highlight I'd like to say is this past Saturday, we had the opportunity as the city to work with the FCSS team. Members of council and staff volunteered to provide a movie at the Service Sports Center in the parking lot. It was just terrific to be able to see people, even though we maintain social distancing and all the pieces to it, to visit with people, residents, and enjoy a beautiful day in our city. So I really want to thank the team with the FCSS group, especially Amber. She led a great charge, and all the volunteers, both staff that took time out of their Saturday to assist, as well as members of council that were able to assist to bring thanks to the people that make our city a great place, the volunteers. And it's simply just an incredible experience to have those volunteers with us. So thank you so much to the team. I'll open the floor if any councillors have any reports they wish to share. Not seeing any. None being, Councillor Whiting.
Should we just, should we make some notes about the polar splash? I don't know if we ever got a chance to do that as far as the announcement of like, I don't know, the best splash.
Well, I'll have to look to some members of council that might be able to comment on that.
We have Glenn here. He can probably tell us who did the best splash, and then after that, maybe we can talk about the biggest fail.
Well, actually, what I thought was really great was the highest amount of money raised by an individual. That was pretty cool, and it means the most to us as far as how that goes. Anyways, that was Kathy Kinsman, the minister at Grace United Church, and the boys from Synergy Credit Union won the best costume, and of course the Councillor Whiting had a very unique splash idea there, and he won the best splash. So congratulations, Jason.
Way to go, Councillor. I'd like to thank all the council members here around the table that took part in it. I also want to encourage and thank all the residents of the community, businesses and business people, volunteers that came forward, and those that helped contribute to raise money for the Polar Splash. The Marty City Connects greatly appreciates the support, and I think it's terrific that our community comes forward each and every time that's challenged from that perspective, that's for sure. And it was a pleasure to be part of it. So thanks for bringing that up, Councillor Whiting.
Yes,
and we'll also do some instructions for next year in order, so because like you would think, how do you get road rash doing a polar splash, but somehow Councillor Torreson made that happen. So some instructions for next year, Glenn, would be fantastic.
Okay, well, thanks. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that.
With that, any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Marin.
Thank you, Worship. So Jason had to work hard to get that in there, but he finally did it. So I just wanted to share the library. As everybody knows, we're moving into the new facility at the mall. Things are coming along really well with the library, and I just want to thank Pete and the team for giving us a tour. The library board was able to have a tour of the facility and start to vision what that looks like. But the library board's been working so hard, and so I think it was just this great opportunity for them to see things starting to happen and take shape, and to to imagine what the library space will look like when everything's done. So it gave them energy, and I just want to say thank you for that. And then Startup Lloydminster, I had the privilege to serve on that board as well. And they're open again for co-working space. So you just phone them to make an appointment. So if anyone out there is looking for a great space to do some work, then connect with Startup Lloydminster. Thanks, Your Worship.
Absolutely. Any other comments from council members? With that, I'm going to move to any other matters, and I would ask Marie Preddy to turn on her video if she would be so kind, as our Chief of Staff. It's a great honor for me to bring to council and our community's attention that Marie Preddy, the Chief of Staff position at the city, has completed 15 years of municipal service in a management capacity. And I received a notice of this just earlier last week, and Marie will receive a 15-year pin commemorating her making note of that service, and wanted to raise that here in front of council, the staff, and the community. It's awesome to have the staff team that we have in management at the ELT level and our entire team, but this is an opportunity to recognize Marie's 15 years in the management role and wish her all the best going forward. And it's just terrific to acknowledge her. So let's give her a round of applause. Hey.
Thank you, Mayor. Much appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm sorry we can't do this in person, but it's everything else, this virtual reality of today. So I just wanted to make that aware. So thank you so much, Marie.
Good job, Marie.
With that, is there any other matters that this council needs to deal with at this time? Not seeing any. I will turn to inquiries from the media.
Good afternoon, Worship and Council. Today the media has re-interview request for Mayor Alders.
Thank you very much, Jessica. With that, I will ask for a motion for recess. Councillor Diachuk has the motion. Councillor Whiting, I got you seconded on for the second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Got it there, City Clerk? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.